Hello, everyone. This is Tina Mitchell with Memories Come to Life, and I've got another Tool Tips with Tina for you tonight. Today, we are going to look at the cute, adorable little die cutting machine that we just came out with, plus the new 12-inch embossing folders and 12-inch dies. And we have some smaller dies and things like that to take a look at. Let's start with our cute little machine. You'll notice I've added stickers. These stickers are available, just to make it your own. So we've got a smile with our little eyelashes. Just roll with it. And it's a good day to scrapbook. And then on the top, I love scrapbooking. There are a few other stickers that you can use as well, but those are the ones that I chose to put on there. This cute little die cutting machine works like this. It is a little over 3 inches wide. The embossing folders and dies are 3 inches wide that go through. And before I demonstrate, I wanted to show you a couple pages that I made today with our new dies and embossing folders. Okay, so here's the first one. That is using this one right here. These come with a magnetic strip. You'll see that later. But that is the first one. I cut out the deep sea green all the way across. Then I cut out maybe 3 or 4 more runs of this with some of the shimmer paper, some of the molten lava paper, some glitter paper I had on hand, and even some holographic silver paper. For those, I'll show you in just a second. I cut those out just by hand, snipped off the stars. So I took, this little section and I just cut that out to make the layering. I used some foam squares on that. And then down here, I just took some of the longer sections, like this one, for example, and trimmed it off and made some fireworks. And I just did a single page with this one because I think I'm going to use this as the beginning of my daughter's album. I then just used some, embroidery floss and untied it around there just to give it a little shimmer. The next thing we're going to look at is down here. This is the embossing folder. This I know is going to be hard to see, but hopefully you can see it here. And you can do this like on colored. I'm going to show you in a minute. There'll be a debossed side and an embossed side. And then I just took a brush and went over it very lightly with some of our teal zeal ink. And so that just makes it show up. I cut a 1-inch strip there, and then I just trimmed it out with some of these same colors and papers that I had used up here. So that's the first page, and then I'll put some mats on there and we'll have a cute little page. So again, I thought about, I might go back and put, enamel dots or gems, but right now I'm really liking the simplicity of this one because it's so sparkly already. All right, let me move that one out of the way. The next one is using this die. When I first saw this one, I kept seeing it more like a vertical down the side of the page for a border. But once I actually cut it out, what I kept seeing was water. So here is a 2-page spread. Again, I just finished this up. I haven't put any kind of other embellishment on it, but I wanted to show you what I used here. I cut out, let's see, 4 different papers with the die. And then I actually used the interior of these to make some little guppy type fish. So I'll show you how I did that. And again, I'll put some mats on here. I may add an extra border up here and definitely a title. But it's going to be cute for whether it's a fishing page or a pool page. Or I actually did this one because I have pictures of every year when we went on vacation to a place called Rough River Lake. My kids would feed the fish, and those big grass carp would come up and they would feed them. So that's what I'm going to use these pages for. And then I just added a little enamel dot for the fish's eye. And I really wasn't sure if you'd be able to see the fish very well. Next time I might use different ones, but because the fish that we were actually feeding were this dark green color, this avocado green shimmer paper, I wanted to, use that color, even though it doesn't show up the best maybe on there. If you just didn't care, you could use, even bright oranges and yellows for tropical fish. And maybe that would show up in the water a little better. So let me set those out of the way and we will do a demonstration. So I wanted to show you this, and I don't have a full sheet of white right handy, but this is what this die does. And then these are the pieces that come out of the middle. So I've seen other advisors who would glue this down on the edge And then they just put different colors in here. You know, either randomly fill up all of them, just fill up some of them. But, you know, that will obviously give you a beautiful look. But again, after I cut this out the first time, all I could see is waves. So, and you know, I made it more complicated than it needed to be, because I could have just put one of these at the bottom and it looks like waves already. But I really wanted to try. I actually wove them a little bit a couple times, and I decided I'd rather use different colors. And I also, you might notice, cut each of these just in half. So there's the one color, the second color, and so on. So I just took my trimmer and trimmed that right down the middle, and then I had one of each color for each side of my 2-page layout. Now you might notice as these middle pieces are laying here, what does that kind of look like? Well, it kind of looks like a flower. That's something I have not done yet. Those could be leaves, those could be flower petals. Again, I'm just kind of throwing them on here, but I think a tulip, I definitely see a tulip there. So many cute things that I will get to play with just from this one die. And again, that one's kind of stuck on there, but you could definitely then use those for flower petals as well, or leaf petals as well. So what I did with them, and I think since I've got these out, I'll go ahead and show you. Let me grab my scissors. I made them into fish. So I took one of these and I just trimmed one end off to be a little more rounded with a point on the end. Got rid of some of that swirl. And then from this point, you can make any kind of fish. Originally, I was looking at maybe something like this. And then what I ended up doing, not with these colors necessarily, but what I ended up doing was making the guppy tail with 3 of those, and I put the head on top, and then I put a little enamel dot there. Now, after I did that, I was like, you know, I think he needs a fin. So I took another one of these. I just dropped the one I was going to use. Let's see, I don't think it matters what color. I took another one of these, and I tried it a couple different ways. What I ended up liking was just kind of cutting it a slight curve and then popping that underneath. So there we have an adorable fish made out of these little shapes. And I'm not one really that likes to save all my punch poop and make all kinds of stuff, but these are beautiful. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and I can't wait maybe to see what you come up with. So if you use this die and you come up with something else brand new, please, you know, comment, show us a picture so we can see what else to do with this great die. All right, we'll move our fish out of the way. And I think I'm going to use, since I just showed you that one, I think I'll just run this through. And you do want to trim your paper down to 3 inches. Now, I've done it a couple different ways today as I've played with this. Sometimes I've done it at 3 1/4, because 3 1/2 I think will fit through it if you've already got a piece of paper that's been trimmed down to that from something else. But when I am laying the die on there, I have found that 3 inches is enough, so why waste that other 1/4 inch, right? So let me get that out of the way. And I do want to show you, we have 2 different types of plates. Now we have bundles available. There's a bundle right now where you can get the machine and I believe the plates. There's a total of, I'll show you these first. There's a total of 6 plates you've got, and mine are well used because I've had mine for about a year now because I got it as an advisor early, one of the perks of being an advisor, so it's been used a lot. But you have a base plate, you have a universal top plate, and they're all labeled, so it's super easy to figure out what you're doing. So if I was going to do a shorter die, which I'll show you some of those in just a second, let me get my magnet out of the way, then you would put your paper down. Again, I'll just show you with this one. And then you would put the universal top plate on, and we'll run it through the machine. If you're using an embossing folder, then you would use, instead of this base plate, you would use the embossing base plate, which it says right there. Put the embossing folder on, still the same universal top plate, run it through, and you'll get the embossing. So I'm going to show you both of those, but we're going to actually use the 12-inch plates because that's what dies we're using. I've got other dies that I'll show you in just a second. Okay, so we build our sandwich, right? That's what we call it with the dies. We put our base plate down. Now, you can do this, I think, either way. Just because you can already notice, I've had this about a year, so it's starting to warp just a little. So if you just turn it over, which I haven't really done with this one yet, it'll warp it back the other way and it'll last longer. But we also have replacement plates. They're pretty cheap. I think a set of all three plates is maybe $25 and a single plate is $9. Okay, so if you've not used dies before, you're going to notice there's a side that has the edge. That's what's going to cut. And then there's a flat side. You always want to put the cutting edge next to the paper. Okay, and actually, this is my top plate, and you'll see it has some grooves in it. It should not. That's because one time, or maybe 3 or 4 times it looks like, I ran a die upside down. So I wasn't paying attention. I put it face up. It doesn't really hurt anything, but it does mark up your dies. So here we have the universal top plate, and again, can go this way or this way. It makes no difference. So I'm going to put it this way just so if you're trying to see those words, you can. Stack it up a little bit so that it's, you're going to have a little paper sticking out the side. You may want to check, depending on what die you're using, you just don't want it hanging off the edge. Let's see. Scoot that over just a little. The die is slightly longer than this paper that I have, so I'm going to hang it off both ends so that, I just don't have to cut the paper off. And we may still, because who knows, it may slide around a little. Okay, this is the die cut machine. Let me pick this up. It depends on if you're right-handed, left-handed. Some people do it front to back. Some people do it side to side. I prefer it side to side with the handle facing me. Now we want to make sure it's even. You give it a little nudge to put it in there. Once it takes off, whoops, I think I got the paper stuck there. Once it starts to take off, make sure it's straight. There. I don't want to let go of this end too soon or it'll go crooked. It does have suction cups. You will hear some popping and cracking. That is normal. These plates are made to be flexible. Super easy. Pops it out the other end. And let's see what we've got. Okay. So you're going to see these are the scrap pieces. And sometimes the paper sticks in here. Sometimes it doesn't. This one came right out. And I did. I got it a little close to the edge. So I may have to trim that. If you run it off the end, actually it looks okay. It's just not punching out. So I think I will trim that one. Sometimes it sticks in the die. And you'll notice the dies are made with tiny little holes. And we have a tool that has, this is a new tool. It's only like $4. It has a rubber end. So like to move these, it kind of, I don't know what material that is, but it kind of grips the paper. And then the other end is a poker tool, but it's not it's not enough to poke you. It's not like real sharp. I have one that I've used before from another company, and if you accidentally get it on your finger, it's literally going to poke the skin or puncture the skin. This one has a rounded tip. And again, if that had stuck in here, I just would have gone around and hit a couple of these with this tool, and that would poke the paper out and you can pull it off. Some papers stick in there more than others. This shimmer paper did not stick, so that's a good thing. I'm not sure if maybe I had this sticking a little too far off this side. So there's just a couple spots. I'd rather, get my scissors out and trim it rather than, yeah, see, I think that's what it is. You can see I didn't actually finish that cut. I'm going to cut it off just jagged because I'm not going to use this piece anyway. But if you get it centered in there, you're not going to have those issues. I just want to be able to get it out so you can see. And so we've got all of our things. Let me grab a piece of white so that you can then see. Now, you can use this across the top of a page as a border. You can use it down the side. I've seen, I think it was Kimberly Sparks did a beautiful one where she cut it down the middle. And she did, you know, you can flip this over, of course. She did a beautiful, more like curved look. You can move them around. You saw, or, you know, look how cute that looks, just as fireworks, and maybe a red one too. And then you would have, you know, whatever you wanted your picture here. And again, let me show you what I did. So I kept it the same all the way across, but then I cut out the little stars and layered here. I think there's a total of 4. There's 4, you know, 2, 3, and then just a cluster of those beautiful little fireworks stars in the center. And then I took some of those that had the arms on them. You know, you just cut it off here and then trim that away. And then you've got this beautiful fireworks burst from the bottom. So, and then again, I'll show you the embossing folder in just a second, but how easy is that? It is so easy to run that through. I do want to say, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look for, oh, did I get those out? We have a little set, and I set it somewhere, and you know, my desk is a disaster. Here it is. The other smaller dies that came out that will go in these 6-inch plates or the 12-inch plates. We have a lowercase alphabet set, an uppercase alphabet set, and then we have these, which if I turn it over, you can see a little better. Real life moments. And then you could cut out the little square or rectangle right here and layer it. So real life, we've got moments, memories, happy, and highlights. And so it will cut all those little ones out, and then you can make your own embellishments with those. So those are really cute. And there are more of these coming out all the time. We actually have a new embossing folder coming out that I am so excited about. It is Autumn Leaves, and it went on sale today. And so once I get that, I've seen an example where you use that with some ink, and oh, it's gorgeous. So there are so many different ways. I'm going to show you the embossing folder next, but there are lots of different ways to use the embossing folder. If you use it on colored paper, you can see the embossing or the debossing, which I'll show you. If you use it on the white paper and add a little ink, it's beautiful. Now, I did this. I ran it through completely plain white. Then I went back with my ink and my brush and just lightly circled with that teal ink. But you can also add ink directly to your embossing folder and then put your paper in, run it through. That gets it definitely a heavier look because I tried that earlier. And then the other option is run it through plain, but then actually take your ink pad and run it on there. But that's also a much heavier look. So I personally preferred, for this layout anyway, I preferred the lighter look of the brush. And that's probably what I'm going to show you next. So let me see if I can find, because I do not see my embossing plate, the long one. Let me grab that. Here it is. Okay, so again, same top plate, same or different bottom plate, base plate, and then we don't use the thicker die cutting plate. I will say there have been lots of questions online about, can you use our dies in other machines? And you definitely can. However, for this machine, you're going to want these plates, I think. You can try other ones, but every company is a little different on thickness. And you can even see here, this is the base plate here is pretty thick. Other companies is a little thinner. And so you may not get the right pressure if you try to run, and there actually aren't any companies that I know of that make these long 12-inch plates. Now, I think at some point Tim Holtz did, but I couldn't find any when I looked online. So buying the whole system is the easiest thing, but if you already have, you know, a different machine, you can definitely try, you know, definitely use your plates in our dies. That won't be a problem. You should be able to use your plates in our embossing folder if you can find a long enough plate. Or if you've got bigger plates and things and you'd want to use the smaller dies, then that should work fine. Okay, let me grab a piece of paper here. I think I'll do white again. And I thought maybe I had, where did I put that piece of white paper that I had out with you guys a few minutes ago? Because I had that small one that I was showing you as a background. Well, we may have to just cut another one because I'm not seeing it. I'm sure as soon as I cut a new piece of paper, it will jump out at me, but we'll just go ahead and do that since we've got my trimmer right here. Whoops. So you notice maybe on that other sheet or the other page that I did a 1-inch strip. I'm going to go ahead. That paper's dirty. I just got back from a crop and this was on the outside edge, so got a little dirty, but we'll use the other side. I'm going to go ahead and do 3 inches so you can see it, but you can do any size you want, especially if you're just going to use it as a border. And while I'm at it, I think I'll go ahead and do, if I have a piece in here, yeah, here we go. I'm going to do a colored one too, so that you can see what that looks like. So we'll cut another 3-inch strip of that. And I'm going to show you the other embossing folder that we have. This one is, I don't know, it's a geometric pattern of some sort. You can see what it's kind of look like. Maybe those are triangles or something. We'll see. I've not actually run this one through yet. So embossing folders are super easy. You're going to put that paper actually inside the embossing folder. You know, make sure it's lined up. You've got your base plate. And again, they're labeled. So I just put that one on the bottom. Put the universal top plate on the top. And then you do the exact same thing that we did before. If you want to push it down to lock. And then every now and then, you know, I can't get it to start on one end, especially if you have dies going through there, because the dies sometimes are thicker, you know, where you've got them on the end, especially if you're using the individual pieces. So if you ever can't get it started one way, just try it the other way and it should go. Or start it this direction. All right, so let's see what we got there with the color. Probably should have done the white one first because you could have seen it a little better. But hopefully you can see how cool that is. Whether you use that as part of a title, like I can see putting letters on that. And just imagine, we've got those letter dies. You can run the letter dies on this now, and you'd have textured letters to put in a title. Or you can put a title on top of that. But this side is raised, right? That's the embossed side. If you prefer, you can flip it over and use the debossed side. So you'll always get one side that's been pushed up and one side that's been pushed down. And so I usually like the embossed side, but for some things, the debossed side is cool. All right, so let's do that again, but let's use white so that I can show you how to ink it. Now, let's see. I'm gonna make sure I'm putting the top on the top. Let's put our paper in the embossing folder. Then base plate and top plate. And again, doesn't matter if these are which direction those go. And then we call this the sandwich. You can see why. Right? So you always see there it's starting to pull the first plate through, but not the second. So I'm just going to turn it around, and I don't know what the difference is, but I've definitely noticed that. That sometimes it just doesn't want to take off. It starts to slide, and so I flip it around. Okay, I'm going to pop out. Again, sometimes it creaks and groans, but that is normal. That is just these plates flexing. Okay, we'll take this out of our embossing folder. And I wasn't really careful. I probably should have with getting it all the way to the edge, but actually I did a pretty good job. And then I want to show you the inking, if I can find my ink. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I am going to grab, yes. I am going to grab my craft mat because I don't want to get my pretty folding mats dirty. So I'm just going to put this out here in case I happen to go off the edge. I have not tried this with the orange, but I was like, you know, it's fall. So I think I'm going to do that. I am going to grab a piece of scrap paper. Where's that white that I cut? And I'll show you why. Okay, so when you're using your ink, I store mine upside down so that all the ink is juicy here, and start lightly rubbing. Now, if you want like a bright orange for Halloween, maybe I'll show you that first. So I'm going to push a little harder, and then I'm going to come on here and start this, and you can see if you want a super vibrant color, let me scoot this over, you can get that, right? But probably what most of the time I prefer is a much lighter hand. Well, technical difficulties. I'm not sure why my video shut off. Hopefully it runs through this time. I'm just going to start off on a fresh piece of paper because We had barely started the inking when my camera shut off. So we were talking about how this is the emboss side. You can do a dark color. You can do, let me pull this paper over here. You can do a lighter shade, like pounce it off a little bit, and then really pale. You'll notice with both of these effects, you're getting down all the way to the edge of the paper, down inside those grooves, right? So there's that. One other thing you can do with the brush is these edges. That's going to give you a softer brush edge. Actually, that one's a little bit harsh because I did not pounce it off, but you get the idea. But I say softer because I'm going to show you what happens with the ink pad itself. Now, because this is embossed, we can also just take the pad and lightly brush over it. And that is only getting the top of the embossing, right? You can also do that on top of what you've already done in the background, right? So that's another way to do it. You can also rub this along your edge. And I'm just doing a straight edge. I don't know if you can see that, or you can brush it and you're going to get a sharper amount of ink. So all of those different ways, plain with the ink pad, with the dark brush, a lot of pressure, with the light brush, a little bit of pressure, and with the ink on top. So many ways to decorate up your embossing folder. So let me show you again what I had done with this earlier. So here was mine. And I did a very light inking on this with the teal. And I did use the brush on this. So you kind of see where it got down onto the paper, not just on top of the dots. If you just went on top of the dots, you could just run the ink over it and you would get more of that look right there with the other embossing folder. Let me show you really quickly how I keep my ink. So this is our ink storage system. And you'll notice I keep mine upside down so that ink is right there at the top when I need it. And you look at all these brushes. And by the way, there are 20 total inks. So there's the other colors. You might wonder why you need a brush for each one. And you don't need one. In fact, I have a friend who's always like, why do you have so many brushes? But I'm going to just brush this off onto my paper. I don't have to clean my brush because I know the only ink that's ever touching this brush is my orange ink. And so I love that because it's so much easier to clean up. You know, your brush is going to be colored, but that's okay because I'm only using one color ink. And because we have 20 shades, they're all very inexpensive. I shouldn't need any other inks other than these. And so I can have a brush for each one, store them in there. You know, this is super lightweight, easy to take to crops, and I just love it. So let me, one more time, show you the pages we made today. We've got this one and this one, and the, you know, possibilities are endless. So I hope that something that we used today and learned today will help your memories come to life. And if you have any questions, if you want to ask any more questions about the die cutting system, the tools, the embossing folders, the dies, just let me know and I'll be happy to answer those for you. I hope you have a wonderful week and I'll see you next time.